Part of what we build is the top-level application for Salesforce, and it's been a great framework, but like all things, they age. And so we were wanting to move to a new application runtime. Everybody wants a new fast framework that doesn't have any of the problems of the past. But what do? You make everyone migrate?
That's not even possible.
And so this engineer came and he's like, hey, why don't we put the Aura compatibility layer inside of the new runtime? Initial reaction was kind of like, there's no way you can ever do this.
This resistance, right, especially with large companies, one thing I always have seen in the past is a huge organizational resistance. How did you manage that? How did you keep it under control? How did you convince people and make sure that the politics is also playing along with you?
So the very first thing is...
Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thanks for having me, Suresh.
The first question, right? I know this is a subject that's very close to many technologists, right? When it comes to championing the most risky idea, it's not an easy thing. When did you realize that you had to really change the usual course of meetings and figure out what is the idea that really failed or was about to fail? You had to pick it up and champion it.
So when you're working with a lot of smart people, you're seeing that they put a lot of effort into projects, and then what will happen is management will come in and say, sorry, we're going to change direction. Teams get frustrated. You probably get frustrated as a leader because you're like, how did this happen? And fundamentally, these things occur when there's not a clear strategy communicated to higher managers and this sort of thing. And so there was a team really passionate about this project, and you go look under the covers and you realize like, we probably shouldn't be doing this work. And so you say like, we got to stop this, right? And that's painful. Engineers get burnt out. Sometimes they don't want to stay. They're like, hey, I've been doing this and I've been putting time into it. And so I think when you see that happen, and then you're also the one having to stop the project, you're also having to assess like, why did this happen? How did we get to this point? So I think, coming back and then very quickly having to like change direction on something that people had actually been working on for like 2 years, this is very, very difficult, very tough.
Can you paint a picture of like how ineffective those meetings were? How painful was it to see things not happening or productive discussions not happening? And how did you figure out that yes, now we have to change it?
Well, I think some of the pain was first, when I came back in, the organization had also come under a new leader. So you have these changes at the top, they don't know the history. And part of what we did was come into the new leader and say, here's what we're working on and here's what we're doing, right? And so they're like, yeah, this project doesn't feel right. Can you dig in and like, can we do this? And so initially you're getting this feedback from somebody that doesn't see the value, and they've obviously been at the company a long time. They're responsible for a lot of large projects that have been successful, and they're kind of telling you like, hey, this one doesn't look right. And so we as a team go and meet, and we're trying to dissect, what is this project? How did we get here? And so when you see that, it's not that the technology wasn't good, but there was no path forward. There's no path to like ship. There was no path for adoption. And I think that's some of the stuff that was uncovered that really became painful.
When you started restructuring this whole format, how did you get around that? How do you make sure that engineers are convinced that their ideas will now be heard, discussed, and even if it's risky, it'll be at least given a fair chance?
It's a great question, because you already have a trust deficit from the team. They don't trust you. Like, first thing you do is come in and kill a project. They're like, who's this person? Why do we want to do anything for them? And you're right, it's challenging. And actually, I have to admit, going through my mind, I'm trying to think like, well, how did we get here? Like, what happened? And then do we have the right people on the team? And so had a couple meetings with my leadership team, and we're thinking like, how can we do better? And so what we decided was like, listen, we need to give them a forum to pitch ideas. We actually came up every year at Salesforce, we do this process of V2MOM. It's, vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And so it's a document that everyone writes. It's a public document to anyone at the company.
The leaders write, or the engineers also?
Everybody, leaders down to ICs. And it's kind of how Mark Benioff started the company. He wrote this V2MOM, and like, we've had this practice. It's a good practice. And so we said, let's make a space for our experts. Engineers have been in the company 6-7 years. They know their area, they know their domain, and have them pitch ideas. And you're right, like, there was skepticism from them, because they're like, well, you killed my project. Why would I come pitch my idea?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, a lot of what we did is we came up with some templates for them to give them an idea what we mean by a pitch, and gave them a couple examples, but then we didn't really know how it was going to play out. The other important part, though, is we invited our product counterparts and then spent time even prepping, like managers, like your most senior engineers are the best presenters all the time, but they have some of the most amazing ideas because they know the problems. I don't know if you know the concept of the iceberg of ignorance.
No.
Oh,
Please.
managers, you're at the top of the iceberg. It's only 4% above water. You don't know about the rest of the 90%.
I see.
The concept's actually pretty solid because if you ask me about any individual problem on a team, I'm probably not going to be the expert. I may have some knowledge, in that. And so the idea is like, how do you kind of melt this iceberg? How can I get more information? And it's like, the only way I can think of is like, give a forum so it bubbles up. And we had two really amazing ideas come out of the first pitch. And it became our strategy. So like the important thing was sort of establishing trust, because the worst thing that could have happened is we do this and then nothing happens with the ideas. You heard the term Markov chains, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
So the story behind Markov is another mathematician made a statement about the law of large numbers. And he kind of said like, well, if anything demonstrates the law of large numbers, it must demonstrate independence. Like, and back then it was like maybe a little bit more philosophical, like free will. And Markov's like, he just didn't like that. He's like, this is wrong. I don't like it. And so he spent time to go develop these Markov chains, which proved that you didn't need to be independent to show the law of large numbers. You can have dependent events, right?
Okay.
And he did it just to show this guy was wrong. And he's an expert in his field. He had no idea that this was going to be used for other things. And like Markov chains, that's how Google made their first page indexing algorithm. But the point is, like, he was an expert and he put his passion in and he showed that idea. And this is the same thing with engineers. They're experts. They're not always trying to drive strategy. They're just trying to tell you what they see and what can be done. But in an engineering world, especially a platform world, this is where some of the best strategy comes from.
So you pick the folks who are very close to the problem statement, who have seen the depth of the problem as well, and then pick those ideas.
Everyone pitches the ideas, and quite honestly, I was surprised. They were all very, very good. Like, I learned so much about the team, and it's almost like you want to try and invest in all those ideas. So we were actually kind of looking for like, what's going to have the most impact. The first idea that bubbled was something that I think our entire leadership team and previous architects and like just wrote off. They're like, well, this is not a good idea.
The application framework idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So part of what we build is the top level application for Salesforce, and it has all the UI in it. And we have this technology that was built back in 2014-ish. It's called Aura, and it's been a great framework, but like all things, they age. And so we were wanting to move to a new application runtime. Everybody wants a new fast framework that doesn't have any of the problems of the past, but the story wasn't that great, because what do? You make everyone migrate? No, like, you're not an enterprise software. You don't say like, by the way, you did this big investment with us and you've customized everything, and you've got to migrate to this new thing. It doesn't work. And so this engineer came and he's like, hey, why don't we put the Aura compatibility layer inside of the new runtime? That was the first kind of big idea that we invested in. And at that time it was an idea, it was a pitch, and we're like, this is good. Let's go prove it out. And then we had to invest in it. Because like I said, if we just walked away, this engineer's not going to pitch anything in the future or even trust us or stay around. And so we invested in it. We did a POC to go show it to managers. And like, this is actually key, like doing that work. Because now you've identified something that can drive strategy, but it's on you to start doing the conversations across all the leadership team. The initial reaction was kind of like, there's no way you can ever do this. How can you do this? Like that, there's just a bunch of disbelief. And fortunate for this project, our team had actually done a fairly large investment in the current framework. We were trying to optimize performance. And so we had changed a lot of key components of the current application framework, which built a little bit of trust with managers saying, well, you have done well here, so maybe this will work too. And then after the POC, we're actually starting to roll this out to some like internal instances. It's working and this is pretty fast. It's about a year, right? In Salesforce terms, we do 3 releases a year, so that's pretty fast for enterprise software. But yeah, that first big idea, we had to do a lot of work to convince architects that would then convince leadership and EVPs and everyone up the chain.
How did you plug that adaptability or that interoperability layer in between?
Well, our entire new architecture is based off of web standards. So we use web components. And what we did is we essentially exposed a web component, and inside of that, we have the Aura runtime.
The conversions. Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
So the nice thing is we can support interop, but people who have already migrated to the new can turn it off.
So this resistance, right, especially with large companies, one thing I always have seen in the past is a huge organizational resistance, and especially for this idea, which I'm sure sparked multiple discussions in multiple groups. How did you manage that? How did you keep it under control? How did you convince people and make sure that the politics is also playing along with you?
This is really speaking to the hard part of the work, right? Sometimes the idea is the easy part. In some cases, it's the hard part. But we had the idea. We felt fairly confident about it as a team. And so it was really a bunch of iterative steps, and we started initially just like build the POC that we can show a demo, show that this technology works, like just proof of life. Don't show up talking about it, show up with something that's working. And so when I say demo, it was working code. And we would show people this is actual code. We can go and take this old feature that nobody thought would run, and guess what? It's running here now. And then that almost like right there was enough to just stop a lot of the disbelief. We planned ahead because our organization has a quarterly architectural summit. And so we were also having a lot of the critical conversations before we showed up to talk to like our distinguished architects and our EVPs. So all of our teams were just getting in alignment and telling a story. It's leading with that value and telling that story about the value, not just we want to go do this thing. It's cool technology. We think it'll make it easier for us. We were telling the value in terms of customers. I think that was really the biggest part of this particular conversation was just the preparing up front, making sure we showed up with a similar story. I'm sure maybe you've worked with architects before where there's a lot of differing opinions. So you have to have those conversations first to make sure that everyone gets to talk about the differing opinions, drive more consensus. And actually a lot more time went into this, like just alignment so that everyone could have their questions and talk about the problems so that when we show up in the room, we actually have a really, really good conversation. Understanding the preparedness you need to have to just go into the room. And I guess like, had we not been ready, I think we were also comfortable deferring the conversation until we were ready, because having the conversation at the wrong time does sometimes mean you don't get the traction.
Especially for this large impact project, I'm reading it as patience first, making sure that you have all the conversations, careful conversations, planned ones. Second, make sure that people who are upset or not so happy with the solution has a chance to really voice their concern and you guys have heard it. And then when you go into the meeting, you're prepared. Take all the questions and get that done. Okay.
Yeah, and then you're essentially turning critics into allies. Because once they've had that conversation and you were able to hear and respond, and then maybe even adjust some things based on that. And the biggest adjustment we made here was initially like the engineering teams, like customers have to migrate. And so like we knew that this is just not.
That's not easy.
That's not
even easy. That's not even possible.
Yeah, and so we're like, why do customers have to? And you end up knowing that it's just like they're like, it's easier for us to go build and ship this thing if customers migrate. And I was like, well, that's not the business we're in.
Exactly.
So that was really the point where we got a lot of feedback up front. We knew going into the room that this was a key point that we had to have a good plan for. And it wasn't just that we would say it. We had to figure out like how we were really going to do this and what did it mean. And we had to go analyze all of the existing architecture of the system to make sure that we had an answer. Like, how does routing work? Like, you're going between 2 different frameworks. How does eventing work? Does any eventing not work? And so we had to go and do all of this sort of deep research for what doesn't work. But then adding in this interop layer kind of gave us a get out of jail free card for the migration, right? Had we not had that piece, this project never would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. Now, such a risky, especially when it comes to a risky project, chances of it getting classified as a pet project also is fairly high. So how did you tackle that? Like not being classified as a pet project?
When we did this project pitch,
Mm-hmm.
my manager actually has this incubation space, and we followed this framework. So after the pitches, we essentially said, hey, we want to make this one of your incubation projects.
Nice.
And the nice thing is he's developed a really good framework, and everyone's kind of involved up front, like like the product people and the senior architects, and they're in there and they're reviewing these projects. They essentially vote on them to say like these ones make the most sense. So it we kind of use that process to stay out of a pet project arena, because now you've automatically got executive sponsorships even from your own manager, and we put a lot of rigor around. And then the first step is actually set the fail fast state, right? And so one of the important things is like, can you prove that this will work quickly?
Proof of concept.
Proof of concept. Once we do that, and it's fairly aggressive, like do it in a month or do it in 2 weeks. And if we can't do it, if in 2 weeks or a month we don't have a good answer for it, then it's probably not something we want to pursue. Not everyone maybe has the same way to align to go and like get the sponsorship up front, but there's always some way. And to avoid pet project, it's like you want to be a little bit more open with it. And like, what are the goals? What are the problems you're trying to solve? How valuable do you think this is? Because a lot of pet projects are like some smart engineer worked on this thing. It's really cool. Look what it does. And you get all those questions later. And if you don't have good answers for it, that's when things kind of get shut down.
Yeah, exactly. There is the other project that I want to talk about, right? So the speed of the website, and that's not a small increase in speed also. It's like 40% increase in 2.5 years, right? If you talk about the numbers, just talk numbers, right? The outcome of these two projects.
That's a historic project. The second project we actually had was about trust work, just reducing tech debt. And I think this one was a bit different. This is a passion project for engineers. Like, how many times you hear from your engineering team on like, hey, we have a lot of tech debt, or we got to go support this code.
All the time.
And this was a pitch by a senior engineer saying like, we need to give time to our teams to reduce tech debt. Engineers love this pitch.
Yes.
And it's the most challenging thing for me
To solve.
because product managers don't care about like that.
For the right reason.
I say, yeah, they may care, maybe they care, but when I talked to my team about this, I said like, yes, we need to drive our trust costs down. What we did is we just got every team to measure how much time they're spending in the same way, which if you go ask your teams now, like how much time do you spend supporting software, they probably don't have the best answer, or it's kind of estimates like 20%, 30%, 40% time. And so the first thing we had to do is measure, but consistently across teams. And that's harder than you think, because you may have spent an hour answering a Slack message. Or do you account for that? And so we had to come up with easy ways where people could account for even that time without adding more process for them. And so, I mean, we came up with some fairly simple accounting rules, and like anytime, this time was spent, engineers had a way to go catalog that easy. Just create a story in this epic and it all gets calculated for you. They're motivated to do it because they keep telling us like, I spend this much time on trust, and we're like, well, we don't see and feel it. So doing the measurement, people could see and feel it. And they had it across, we have like 16 teams. There's about 105 people all over the world. And finally we measured it, and we could see some teams where like half their time was, customer issues or some bug in production, pager duty calls, and we're on the phone and all of that. What happened is, as we started implementing this, I had written a document to show like, look, every engineer that we get off of trust, we now invest in innovation. And we set a goal just to get a 10% improvement. So in an org of 100, you're getting 10 other engineers. Our goal was really just free up 10 engineers' time from doing trust so we could go work on more projects and ship more of the features in the backlog. But the product managers were like, why are you allocating this time to trust? Even in that case, sometimes it gets escalated up, and there's other conversations, and you have to go explain why you're doing this. And so since we had done all the measurement, and we knew like how much time each, like I said, some teams were 40%, some teams were 20%, some teams were 30%. We could show like this investment in this critical area gets you that much time back. Really being able to show the numbers and really kind of having that framework is super, super helpful, because that again, that project would have been killed. We didn't have good answers. We didn't have consistent measurements.
This project went on to make it to the Vibe core, and
when you start down the path of innovation, made the right investment, you can actually take it much, much further. So yeah, the keynote this year at Dreamforce, it talked about vibe coding and how you can build apps using, other frameworks, because historically you had to use the framework we provided. And it was all real code demos on stage. And with this new application at the top, it was a very simple change for us. It was part of what we needed to change, but it's something we couldn't have done with the old system. So unfortunately, with the old system, we have exactly one HTML doc we produce, and that's it for everybody, and it goes. And so that's good and bad. The bad part is the flexibility. So with the new system, we changed that. We're like, well, we don't need to have the same constraint with just one HTML doc. And you could have custom everywhere. And so one of the developers on the team, and this is a different developer, was playing with this new system and said, I could show you a React app here. And we're like, oh, that'd be really cool. You should go build that demo in POC. And he did. And then I see this and I'm like, you know what? We should probably do a hackathon here. Like, people are going to get really excited about this. And then he went off and wrote a doc on how to do this. And then we opened it up and invited a lot of people. And we had product managers coming in and vibe coding applications in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
the true product managers.
Yeah. Product managers that don't code. We were like, because they're just asking for the code. The nice thing is when you have the product manager showing what they made, it speaks for itself. And so the team got to go demo to Mark Benioff, and he's like, this is really exciting stuff. He's like, we need to get this in the keynote. That was really exciting for the team.
That is a true outcome for such an initiative, right? So that's a true recognition for even the engineers. They would love to see that. Now, somebody who's going to take this idea and implement in their own companies, right? What are the things that they should be watching out for? How can you help them be successful in executing this?
My team hears me say this all the time. I say, when I see status quo, that's my opportunity to innovate. If you want to change something and have an effect, if you're going to operate the same way you've been operating, you have the same result, right? And so you have to be willing to change things. And that's actually, I think, challenging for some people. Some people don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to do this. And so the thing I do is I look for the troublemakers, the people that are like pushing on the edges, because they're going to help you. They want to change things anyway.
They are the ones.
And so heroes. You have to give the forum, and you have to really be thoughtful about how you give the forum. And, psychological safety is very, very important in this. If people don't feel like it's a place that they can share and they're not going to have repercussions for it, they won't share. So I got on this Blinkist kick, and I was listening to all of these kind of blinks. And I actually recommend it, especially if you feel stuck, because you're going to get 1,000 ideas faster than you would reading all the books, like in completion. I do like reading books too, but sometimes you just get the concept. And I remember listening to this one. It was talking about how this study was done with a group of people and how do you create positive energy, because in engineering, a lot of times you hear about the negative side, like we can't do this because of this, because of that. If then else, right? Yes. And so I think having a willingness to look at how you can actually do something different. Now, this study, the two groups, one group at the end of the day wrote down all the problems they encountered and try and diagnose, like, what could they do? Sounds like good practice. Right? The other group wrote down what they were grateful for. Now, at the end of the study, what do you think happened to the group that wrote down all their problems and diagnosed?
They improved.
Not much. Same thing. They were doing the same thing. They identified problems, but they actually didn't improve. The people that wrote down what they were grateful for, though, did. And this is where a lot of the innovation was going. And it was a very weird concept to me. The problem is you're thinking only about the problems. All the people that are thinking about what they're grateful for, they're actually now disassociating with the problems and then seeing new opportunity. It was a very weird concept. But I think implementing this stuff, it does start with your mindset first. And if you find that you're in a pattern and you're frustrated, and then you're also in the leadership position, you're frustrated, you should start with yourself.
I see.
And if you start with yourself, we might actually think like, how do I shift my mindset to help people be more productive? And that's what a lot of this was about. Like, if you want those ideas to bubble up and you want your team to share with you, you need to create that space for them.
Be the last one to speak.
Be the last one to speak. Leaders speak last.
Thank you, Kevin, for joining me. It was fun to have this conversation. It was probably one of the awesome conversations that I had, especially championing an idea that could potentially fail, that too by the leader of yours, is a huge statement. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Suresh. It was an honor to come and meet you. And I love chatting about these things. Don't be a stranger.
Marvelous time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.